Okay, approval of the meeting minutes from April 26th.
Motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Okay, the next thing is the public input. I don't see anyone right now, so we're continue on to number 4, which is the I'm looking at
The demographic.
yes. Okay, Manuel, you're up on the demographics. And also Matt as well.
Yeah, I'm
Do you
happy
wanna-
to
Go ahead,
speak
yeah.
to it. I'll share my screen. Give me 1 second, please.
We got it.
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to get your video up at the same time, but it won't come up. So that's all right. So we've been doing some further work with Cropper GIS and the district. It's mainly around the use of end of year numbers, as we call them, which are really numbers that are that the district tabulates sometime before the end of the year. It could be anywhere from March to June. But Cropper would like to look at those and run a standalone analysis on those, because as we've heard, the number of students in the district goes up from the October 1st data set that we've had to the end of the year. And so we want to make sure that we're capturing all of the students that we can. And so this is the purpose behind doing that, is to capture any additional enrollment that we can by doing that. And so it's taking a little more time than we anticipated. But right now we're collecting the data for those for the end of the year from the district. I think, Manuel, you could speak to what you're trying to do with RIDE. And then we'll, at the same time, we're also looking at CTE enrollments as they're projected for out-of-district participants with the expansion of the CTE program. So Jeff Heath has given us an analysis that he did. We've given it to Cropper. They're going to take that and add some language to their report, which speaks to it, and they're going to include Jeff's analysis as an appendix into their report, so that we can use that to have discussions with RIDE about how much more out-of-district students there should be with the expanded program. So Manuel, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, I guess I'll fill in that question that you asked about the RIDE. Cropper has requested and usually wants to look at both the district provided data against whatever was submitted to the state. Because only October enrollments are publicly published on the website, we have to do a data request through the Office of Information and Data. So we have put in that request for that end of year data, and that's essentially happening in parallel with the district providing data. And again, I guess just to reiterate, this process is taking a little bit longer, but only because we want to make sure that we're counting every student that can and will be in these classrooms, to make sure that we're getting a really strong picture. And also because eligibility for state aid is tied to that number, that projection number. So just as a reminder of why we're spending the time really making sure we have these numbers right. Thanks, Matt.
May I just add something to that too with the enrollment. In our conversation this morning with our planning team, we talked about the enrollment and a metric being put in there for the students that we lost from COVID across the country. And that's accommodated in Cropper's reports.
You mean the kids that didn't come back after COVID?
We're seeing that across the country. We see it in the state, but across the country, there's a large portion. That's why in terms of state aid and the dollars we get for our military, there's been a hold harmless because there was a significant dip across the country and in the state.
And Matt, this also, and Manuel, this also takes into account the 10% increase that the military has been giving us so far.
Correct.
Okay.
And just to elaborate on the point that that Superintendent Krager just made, if you notice on the bottom left, that 6 through 8 enrollment, the dip that you see in the middle school actually lands on what RIDE's planning year would be. So it's an anomaly, and the anomaly is essentially what Superintendent Krager mentioned is that COVID dip as it travels through your school system. So Cropper in the report is making a note that the anomaly is not a good planning number. And so we'll have to work to make sure that RIDE understands that we're not planning for the anomaly because it would not represent the actual enrollment of this school that we should be planning for.
Question. So the numbers for the end of year need to come from RIDE? And
We're doing both. It's a verification process that the demographer just uses. He just wants to know that there's alignment between what the district provides and what the state provides.
Thank you.
And our numbers fluctuate because of military in and out and different classes coming in.
Could we not run some sort of 5 or 10 year regression? And find out,
I mean,
data points, we'll scatter plot, and then you run your lines through that and compare them. Even
Yeah.
if it shows a decrease, at least you have some sort of alignment to get rid of that anomaly.
our data people are doing that.
How far back do we get to go?
Um,
As far as we want?
no,
Yeah, I would think at least a
What do they
5 year,
do?
if not a 10 year.
They're trying to go 7, but the data is not as clean as
the data is a lot cleaner now than it
Yeah.
has ever been.
Understood.
yeah. And there's a lot of factors we spoke about this morning in our meeting that you have to consider to figure out that you're pulling the right enrollment. So are we talking about kids that left the district for a couple of months for an outplacement, then came back? Are we talking about students that left for the whole year? How do you count all the bodies? It's really easy to say all the kids that were in 3rd grade, right? But how about those kids that kind of come in and out? So we just want to make sure that the data that we're showing is consistently compared. So they're working on it.
Yeah, we have students who go out of district placement for sometimes the full year or just a part of the year. Placements like Bradley School, Meeting Street School.
Okay, so we're going back 7 years and we're analyzing each year and then coming up with an average?
So breaking down each year by different categories.
Yeah.
So kids that were enrolled in general ed, kids that were outplaced and returned, kids that were outplaced and did not return. There's quite a few categories, and they are going back as far as they can.
Okay.
One of the things that kind of threw us off is that we sort of always have it for October 1st. That's kind of our capture date, but they're also asking us about the springtime capture because there is a fluctuation in Middletown. So that's kind of, and we're kind of functioning with just maybe one person doing the data and somebody that we use as a consultant. So it's been a little difficult to pull some of that correctly. But we're working on it.
Can I ask too on the COVID dip? It's not just our students; it's also the War College international students really dropped as well. So how is that captured and all that?
Well, it just
And
would
if
be
they back up-
general enrollment because during COVID, orders were frozen.
Right.
Or any movement there was, the military individual came rather than the whole family.
Yeah. So to me, it's like how trying to break this down is like there's students and there's families that didn't want their kids to come back after COVID, right? But in this case, it was just because of that. The orders were frozen, but they're gonna come back. And they probably have. Is the War College now like 100% now?
Well, it won't be,
Yeah.
won't be until your next classes start in the
Right.
summer.
Right.
Right.
They talked about a 10% fluctuation. I know the last time we were on a call, we spoke of that when referring to the military population. There was nobody that would put it in writing for us, though. I know
Mhm.
Superintendent Krager did speak to quite a few people on that.
Like on average, is there like from the War College, how many international students do we get in our schools, do you think, every year?
Well, international and just military, we probably have 500 students leave and 500 new students come in.
But during
Um,
COVID, we lost 400 of that, maybe, something like
mhm.
that. So we know for sure they're coming back, I guess, is what my point is, versus like some people may just decide not to have their kids come back.
I think a lot of them have come back, and that's why we
Okay.
saw that dip.
Okay.
So I think the hardest thing is that when they go back so many years, that's where they go back to that year.
Right.
And so that's what he was just saying is really a tough year to go back to, because we had so many different things happen. Parents kept their kids home to do distance learning and never came in. So, I mean, there were a lot of different components to that, but I think that demographers really recognized that when we spoke with them, that was up in the conversation.
And
So
on other districts who are doing the same thing, RIDE is going to see the same thing.
You'll see the same
repeatedly.
COVID dip.
COVID dip.
And
What complicates ours is the military.
yeah, but our enrollment is still projected down, which
Mhm.
doesn't feel comfortable
Right.
for a lot of us when we were looking at the numbers for the middle high.
Mhm.
It feels low. And therefore our building would be proportionately smaller. And then the fear is that we'd have more
Right.
kids, draw more families when we have a beautiful new school, and then start with a school that's not big enough.
Mhm.
And that's the fear that's why we're trying to make sure these numbers are correct.
Mhm.
And East Providence did see an increase in students
With the new building.
with the new building.
Right.
Would we be able to query Saugus or Weymouth on their?
You know,
results?
I actually asked that question of the superintendent as we toured the building, and he did say, he didn't quantify it, but he did say that there was an increase. I don't know, Matt and Tina, you might have more information on that.
I don't have anything for Saugus off the top of my head, but I could get that information.
That would be useful.
And with Weymouth, it's so recent. I'm not sure that it would be a reliable number yet.
But just in terms of the district, like in general, we could ask if they, saw that same dip.
And to complicate, they opened up their schools in COVID, didn't they?
Yes.
They did, yeah.
So it's going to be a little skewed.
Mhm.
The same thing happened in
But we're doing marketing, so
Mhm.
let's get all the numbers we can.
Yeah.
Right. And we want to be sure, we don't want to be in a situation where we hear so many districts where they build the school and then you're undersized before you open the doors. And, that oftentimes has happened in Rhode Island and across the country. So
On this island.
that it's worth taking that time
Yes.
that we're doing right now. Mhm.
Just, we had a meeting on the naval base this afternoon, and this was a question Ed brought up, but there is no planned expansion of military housing.
Okay.
There's no planned construction.
Right.
And no planned naval ships immediately, just the discussion of NOAA and the
Coast Guard cutters.
Coast Guard cutters, so. and-
What about our increase in affordable housing though? Do we have a number on how many kids that may, if any, like what?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
been
We have
supplied
those.
to the
Okay, so that's
demographer,
all
and that's
included there, too.
included as an appendix to the
Mhm.
study.
Okay.
Yep. In fact, the planning office gave the demographer all of the permits, not just the
Right.
affordable, but all development in the town. So they have an accurate snapshot.
Cool.
Okay, Matt and Manuel, back to you.
Next. We've been working with our educational planning group. We meet every Wednesday morning, and we've been talking about the layouts options for the middle school and the high school for the classroom clusters. We call them pods or learning communities, but we're really interested in how the different grades are distributed amongst the floors of the building, and how that part of the building is its own standalone academic area. So we've developed these diagrams to talk through with them about how we're envisioning it. And we've gone through, each of the program areas from the space program that relate to this. And it's mostly the core classrooms, which include their, the regular size classrooms and the science rooms, as well as special education rooms and all the support spaces that go along with this. So these are diagrams you're seeing here for the middle school, both a first floor version you're seeing on the left, and then upper floors, second and third floors you're seeing on the right. They're very similar, but at the first floor level, there would be an art room. At the upper floors, there'd be a tech classroom. First floor, there'd be an outdoor classroom. And then we've also looked at the high school side, and this is a little more complicated because in the middle school, it's based upon teaching teams. And so the number of classrooms is a little more prescribed by that. And on the high school side, we're looking at putting the 9th grade academy on the ground floor, mixing in some of the CTE spaces, and having the 10th through 12th graders on the upper floors if we do a 3-story wing of the building for this. And so this is what it would look like and about how big it would be. And I think Manuel made the point when we met that the advantage to this layout is that with the CTE classrooms that are in the purple, they would be seen as being well integrated into the high school, so as a comprehensive high school, which would help our argument with RIDE about using a square footage per student that's more along the lines of a vocational school than a conventional high school. Any questions or comments there?
Everybody all set? Okay, Matt,
Okay.
you got on for number 6?
I think we're up to site investigations.
Yep.
So the geotechnical report has been issued and we've provided that to the town. It reiterated what they felt before, which was that shallow foundations for the building are suitable for this project. So that's good news. They also identified that the existing fill in the area that we're planning on building is unsuitable as structural fill, and that we would need to excavate down to the level of natural soil and bring in structural fill to whatever level we would need for that. And the depth of that existing fill varies from about 2 feet to 8 feet across the portion of the site that we're talking about. So there are some costs associated with that, with taking out material and then bringing in new material, but we don't have any sense of the quantities of that yet. Are there any questions or comments?
And as far as the compaction, the compressibility of the clay, that testing is going to be done as well?
They did include some analysis of that, but I believe there will be more testing done specifically about compaction. Yeah.
All right. I think we should make certain we get that as soon as possible as well, so that we can understand completely what we might be facing as far as subsurface conditions.
I can speak with them about that.
Okay.
And Matt, when we return with proper structural fill, like is it going to be return to the exact same elevation that the site is right now? Or are we able to not fill up certain areas in this?
Yeah, because the foundations go down up to 4 feet. You would be excavating to that level. And so
Yep.
even if we just accepted the grades that we had and had to put in our foundations, we'd have to take material out to make room for those foundations. So there is
Yep.
some material that would have had to have been brought off site anyway.
Right.
And putting material back, you're bringing it up to the level of under the bottom of the footings.
Any other questions on site investigation?
Were you surprised by any of that, Matt?
Yeah, it was interesting to hear that the fill that was used was not structurally suitable. That was, it's always a question when you get a site that this had fill. It's always a question of where it came from and what it's composed of. They talked about having some organics in it, so stuff that will decompose over time. There's some roots in it. There's some asphalt. There's even some plastic in it. So in addition to that, we'll be doing testing under the geoenvironmental consultant for phase 1 investigations. That should be happening fairly soon.
And
That would,
wetlands,
that would tell us if there's any kind of contaminants that we have to deal with.
and that'll include the wetlands delineation?
That's the next slide, Don.
Oh,
And perhaps Mr. Brown can answer this. Do we have the tickets on the material that was brought in? Can we source that?
We should have that on file.
And I think it would be worthwhile to have for the structural analysis.
And also what we can possibly do with the material.
Apparently, we're going to build another lacrosse field.
For other purposes.
Yes.
Any other questions on site investigations? Okay, let's step on now to the sustainability visioning workshop.
Before we do that, there
Oh.
is one more or a couple more things under site investigations.
Sorry.
Okay. So wetlands. So the wetland scientist has been out to the site, has flagged the areas for wetland plantings, which you can see outlined in the magenta lines here. And they identified wetlands on both sides of the old driveway for the drive-in theater. We knew, of course, it would be on the south side of it where our school property is, but and we also suspected it would be on the north just by the what kind of vegetation is visible out there, and so that kind of confirms it. And these flags are now in place. The surveyor will take that and put it into their site survey plan so that we have them located in the survey. And that will help us identify the boundaries of the wetland and serve as the starting point for discussions with RIDEM about the developmental restrictions that could impact the project. We're not anticipating that they'll impact it greatly. There's some question about what they'll allow for this to use through the old driveway, because we do want to put a new driveway in there, and we think that because it had a previous use that they would allow us to have it, but maybe not expand it beyond the boundaries of what it was. That could influence whether we could have a two-way roadway, which would be 24 feet plus any sidewalks, versus having to keep it to a one-way roadway. So that's something we're going to be looking at closely. Any questions or comments?
Will that eventually be the only entrance and exit into the property?
No, the way we anticipate that will be one point of multiple points. We would anticipate keeping the existing main entrance on Aquidneck and keeping the other point on Turner Road over by the athletic complex. So this would be adding one more point of access than there is today.
That's positive too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you had talked about using that during construction, if we could make it two-way. So obviously that's a big question to understand.
That's right.
Or during construction, you could still have a narrow one and just,
They
flag
would
it
have to,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. I think
you
it can
get a-
work.
Or you get a permit to create put the things down. I forget what they're called offhand, but
The
yeah,
hay bales and erosion control.
the mat, they call them
Oh.
mats. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, any other
Okay.
questions? I guess now we can jump into the issue of sustainability visioning workshop.
One more, Ed,
Oh.
before you get too far.
Oh,
This will be very
sorry.
quick. And so we're continuing to work with Sean and Bob Hanley and coordinating with Rido on the Aquidneck Ave improvements. And so this plan shows where their plans indicate a water stub in onto our property, which is at that point that we're just talking about, the old driveway for the drive-in theater. So they have some sizes and features on this that we're getting input back from our plumbing engineer on, and will help confirm for them what they're doing.
So just based on today, just as an update, we've been working with the city of Newport, so that this plan has changed some, so there'll be a separate water service for the fire from the water. So there'll be two lines coming from Aquidneck Avenue into the hot box. Bob Hanley's been in touch with Newport and also with Steve Cardy to make sure that we'll be able to construct the stubs onto the property.
So we'll have two water services, one for domestic and one for fire service.
Yes.
Okay. And now I think we can move on, Ed.
Keep moving things along.
So we've talked a little bit about setting up what we call a sustainability charrette or visioning session. We'd like to get that done in May so that it can feed into our stage 2 report, and we can help use the information that we gain out of that to help guide us as we get further into design. So the things that we need to determine are who are the best people to attend, and we recommend as wide a range of stakeholders as you can get to attend, including people from the town side, people from the school department, any interest groups within the schools, and then any experts or interest groups in the community at large. Some students would be great to have. It's all a kind of juggling act about what time of day you can find that works for that group, and how long it could go. We'd like this to be a couple of hours to really get through the material that we have.
Would you do it in sessions, Matt? So we could have multiple hours, like 2
Yes.
hours, maybe in the afternoon, so we capture some people, and then maybe another 2 hours in the late afternoon and 2 hours in the afternoon?
Yeah, we're willing to work with whatever works best for you.
Because I think that might work. I don't know. What does the group think?
Well, I think one thing that we want to do is if we're going to get community members in, we have to be later on in the day, certainly. But we certainly also want to make certain we get the student input, because I think they're going to be a valuable resource. So I think the idea of breaking it up maybe into 2 sessions might work and is workable.
2 or 3, do you think?
Well, I think I just get concerned if we have a 3rd session and making it later in the day that you're not going to get that many more people there.
Mhm.
Where, we have to have, Matt, how many people from your end are you feeling that you're going to need to have at this session?
We might have about 6 from the design team, and we would typically try to get somebody from the utility there to talk about incentive programs.
Right.
I don't know, Manuel, maybe you could, or Ed, if you're on, have any other thoughts about that?
Would we, any of the MEBs be the, the mechanical,
Yeah.
electrical,
Yes.
plumbing?
Yeah, they would be the key ones from the design team, the
Right,
energy
okay, so
modeler.
you're part of
and-
that design
yeah.
team. You're using them as well.
Correct, yeah.
I know that Manuel
Going
has
to-
a little bit of trouble with getting students right after school, right? Because a lot of them have sports. So I wonder if it'd be easier to have it later in the afternoon for them. So it's after sports. Either that or during the day.
Plus, it's a tough.
Yeah,
time of year.
I mean, I'm thinking early June. Is that too late, Matt? Are we pushing it too late? Because,
No.
if we're in playoffs, would be early June with any of the sports.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I think we could work with that.
If we work at the first 2 weeks of June.
Yeah,
Maybe.
we were just a little afraid that as you got close to the end of the school year, that it's hard to get people, but if you think that's actually a better time, then that's fine with us.
Mhm. We also have senior events too going on, probably the week of June.
I know the last week of May, we have like National Honor Society. We have those senior banquets,
Mhm.
sports banquet. So I think we need to look at the high school calendar.
Right. I think we need that calendar
Yeah.
that will help us.
Okay, we'll get the calendar and
Good
then
job.
try to arrange things around that. I mean, I liked when we did the regionalization talks, we had the two time slots, and that seemed to get the early birds and then the ones who were working after school. We just need to think where we're gonna have this. But we'll work on that. The first thing, as Michelle said, is to get that high school schedule. We'll email him as we're at this meeting now, and then get back to you.
Okay.
And I know it's sustainability visioning, but will there also be like an overview of the project if people wanted to attend to just kind of get an overview of what's going on?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think they do need to understand the context of what we're discussing. So that would be something we'd start out with. Yes.
And it might be a way to get, more people who maybe feel out of the loop or don't really know what's going on, if there's just like a quick overview of what's happening.
But I think we need to stress, what part of the process we're on as we do this as well. So they
Yes.
understand that that's not what's going to happen,
Right.
exactly.
Right. And we will have, this is what we typically would do, is have one at this stage, which is really about setting goals. And then another one further down the line, perhaps an SD or early DD, where
Mhm.
we talk more about the strategies that we're using to address those goals. So there would be a chance for people to see it further development at that point.
Matt, RIDE doesn't really have a complete program on this, right? Is it, they are offering bonus points for some of this, correct? Or no? Did I miss that?
So the legislature is considering offering bonus points for this, especially if we can get to all electric or net zero. Some of that will be cost dependent in what comes out of the thinking though. And it also and we'll know fairly soon if the legislature is going to take action on that piece. Right now, energy incentives basically have sunset as far as I can tell. But that is part of kind of what's being discussed in all of the legislative action.
And then there's also Rhode Island Department of Energy Resources too, that I don't know if they have programs for schools or for towns or that we've discussed with them. Do you know anything about that, Derek?
I do. So I met with them recently, actually on behalf of another district, but highly relevant here. And at the moment anyway, most of that funding is for renovation. So it may be that there's something we could pick up in the realignment of early elementary, but probably would not be suitable for the middle high school portion.
Thanks.
You know, just to, back to the meetings, I'm emailing all of the principals because we have activities at every school the end of the year. So hopefully they'll get me their schedules by the end of this week, early next week, and we'll hone in on dates.
So from a sustainability standpoint, what demographic of students do we anticipate participating? I mean, we really wouldn't, I'll be surprised if we get elementary, right? So I'm thinking, is there a targeted group at the high school or something that, like, you know, we have the group that came forward to do a survey from the government class or something. Is there already something active from a sustainability standpoint at the high school that we could just tap?
I think you could put this out to 6 to 12. I really do. I mean, I just threw out interviews for high school principal and I had at least 10 students come forward. So they want to be involved. I think if we throw it out there and kind of work around the schedules that exist, I think you'll see that kids want to step up. And I think it's appropriate for 6 to 12 to be part of it. I do. I think they could.
I think what we have to advertise is some of our college students coming back home now. And, you know, maybe them being part of this.
Yeah,
Because
and
that's
those would
another
be more
whole
of the
capture.
evening one, the evening one. I'm really just trying, it's the evening one. I think we could schedule it, you know, pretty much anytime. It's the day one that you need to zero in on, right?
Yeah, but we have to make sure that's not National Honor Society or concerts or third grade celebrations.
Their science courses or science classes, you know, anybody's environment or recycling or climate. Maybe science teachers could spread the word.
Exactly. And we do have a club at the Gaudet School. So.
One last question on this topic, sort of, is at one point, could we engage companies that could come, you know, be a part of this project? They would put the money up for, say, solar projects. If you've seen that in the past, where like, I know we're setting goals with this, but
I
at
have
some
one that
point-
calls me every day about my house. I'll give them your number.
Well, there's programs out there. I mean, I work for a company that does, we have enough work, trust me, but I'm just saying, like, there's opportunities out there that where you lease out your roof. And you know, you either get credits, you get credits back on your National Grid account, whatever it is. So I just know if you guys have worked in a similar situation where you've been able to incorporate that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say,
I was gonna say, shoot, Matt, we do that to each other because we're both virtual,
It's
but
the
go
time
for it.
delay.
You go and then I'll go.
Yeah, I've had it on one project where it came after completion and they engaged somebody. We kind of assisted the owner to do that, but it came like at the end of the project.
Yeah, the only thing I would recommend is if we are thinking about that we have to plan a lot, you know, our roof space, wherever, if we're doing it in a parking lot with carports, like whatever it is. So, you know, it's definitely an option. But we'd have to kind of plan it in to these buildings.
I think it's good for us to hear that it's important, and that way we can use that information to help do just that as we design the roof, try to design it so it maximizes the available area. And we can work with our engineers to help, you know, at least identify the things that would cause shadows or other obstructions that we can try to minimize.
And typically the buildings are solar ready, we say. So we put in, you know, the infrastructure that you would need if you put solar panels on the roof and you could connect into it. So it would be.
Isn't it just something though that is really going to come out of your sustaining ability visioning? Meaning is you're going to establish it as a priority to do it or not to do it?
Yes.
Mhm.
So that's key to this visioning process.
Right.
Right.
Okay. I don't dare say, I'll say it again. Okay, we all set with the sustainability visioning? Okay, guys, what's the weeks ahead look like?
Just on the design team side, We talked about the demographics report follow-up work that we're doing, end of year numbers. So it'll happen over the next couple of weeks, at least. We don't quite know when the data will be available from RIDE, but we'll try to establish a working number before long. Then we're still working with our group on the space program and how to realize efficiencies and get the square footage to where we want it. And then the pod layouts that we introduced, we're going to have another round of those going forward, where the principals can actually start to assign people to rooms, and that way we can check if we have the right number of room or if there's any way that we can realize efficiencies by doing that. We talked about the wetlands flagging that's already happened, the environmental investigations, the soils work. We're going to be looking to get that, if it hasn't been already scheduled. I haven't heard yet, but it should be soon. The water line coordination work and the street work is ongoing. And then we talked about preparing for the sustainability shred. So we have some work to do to get that, to shape what that workshop is going to look like on our side. Then we're also developing the scope for how the high school could get adapted to accommodate the grades 4 through 5 and the district admin offices. So that's something we've been working on and will continue to do so that we can have that available for the cost estimator to start evaluating. And then lastly, the work to identify and target down what that 4th CTE program is something that we will have to happen over the next several weeks and be an important part of the educational programming document that goes to RIDE in stage 2.
Who's working on that line item? Is that you guys are working on? Who are you working on that with?
High school principal
Okay.
and students. We did get some input from the community. It was kind of all over the place when we did the community survey. We need to hear from the students and then really talk to RIDE about what will be approved or what could be approved.
But we've certainly narrowed
We've narrowed it. Yes,
considerably.
yes, very much so.
All right,
That's all for me, so I'm going to stop sharing.
all right. As far as the milestone updates, Justin or Derek, what are we looking at there?
So I think Justin has an updated schedule. He should be able to pull up.
All right, I believe my screen is being shared.
Yes,
We see it.
So on the schedule, no real major changes other than what we've been talking about. On this schedule, I just tried to show some of the highlights of what we are targeting. Educational planning and spatial planning, as Matt said, we're looking to have that done in a couple of weeks. The final educational program document by the end of July. Demographics is still ongoing, targeting the final report, the week ending May 20th, should we get all the information gathered. District-wide master planning, the recommended option was presented just recently. Scope development will be ongoing for that, through the beginning of June, with cost estimating scheduled towards the end of June for the district-wide master planning. And then conceptual designs are ongoing. looking to have some developed, conceptual layouts by the end of this month, with some, with the more developed schematic design documents towards the end of June, and cost estimating again the end of July. And then our key elements here is our draft submission for RIDE, still on schedule for June 15th, with our final formal submission August, around mid-August. And then I just have a couple of milestones on the schedule here for the townwide voting in November, and our major star, the RIDE board approval and MOA the end of this year. Some information that we still need to work out with the district is for the communications, for the informational flyers, the school based meetings and tours, and then of course our community outreach meetings. Any questions on the milestones?
Yeah, this is Don. So I'm confused how we can have a draft RIDE, stage 2 RIDE application in June when we don't do cost estimating until the end of July. What's going to be in the draft?
Yeah, so I can address part of that. So in addition to the final estimates and all of the documents, we will be able to give them draft plans of things under development. And then similar to stage 1, there is a huge amount of sort of bureaucratic and backup documentation. And it's in our interest to have kind of a comprehensive draft package to them without being so far along that it's too far to make meaningful changes. So the idea is going in June to RIDE with a fully fleshed out outline of the approach we're taking. We'll give them time to review and respond such that before we're done and have things estimated and they're trying to lock things in, they'll be able to offer some opinions or redirects. They tend to come in with quite a number of suggestions always. And so I think we'll have the right amount of things done to make that most useful so that we don't have to undo work that was previously completed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that I understand that. I can't see how we could do any more than just, this is what our plan is with no real details. My concern is back in March, the town council heard from you that we will be back in June with a cost. There was actually a comment made by a council member that they want to make a decision whether to proceed or not at that point. So my concern is what we're going to be able to give to town council in June is nothing what they're expecting. So we need to start letting them know now that things have changed, because we do not want them to be surprised in June.
Yeah, I think those are good comments, and hopefully I can offer a little bit of clarity to maybe alleviate some of that concern and talk about what we're doing. So I've been issuing updates through Sean for every town council meeting. So they've kept pace with where we are to date. They've been getting all of these presentations, so have seen the schedules have all been changed as I had kind of suggested they might, and they'll be receiving the schedule and presentation for their meeting Monday evening. Part of the concern about the cutoff in June was, one, what we might know from the legislature at that point, and also initially there was a threshold of about $1 million payable to the design team based on where they were in terms of overall completion. Because the schedule has shifted, the pay schedule has shifted as well. So in terms of the outgoing cash that's at risk, should something happen and they wish to pull the plug, they will have in fact spent less money. So I think they will appreciate that as well. Not that I can foresee anyone wishing to pull the plug on the project, but what we'll more than likely be able to give them is kind of the accurate information from the legislature about what to expect from the bonuses, provided that the legislature takes that action in time for middle of June, which I suspect they will, because they'll be trying to recess before the 4th of July. But then also we'll be able to give them reporting about expenditure and where we are. So I will continue to communicate with them so they have information at every single one of their meetings. And we have been to date, and that may not be widely known, but that is happening. But also the risk that they were very focused on has been somewhat alleviated in terms of the slowing of dollars out the door of expenditure associated.
Okay, well, that's great to hear. Is it possible for you to share some of that with us when you give these updates? I had no idea this was taking place. It'd be great to see these updates that are going out, so we at least are aware of. It's the first I've heard that you're giving regular updates to the town council.
Well,
So-
when I went online for the town council and looked at the update that they were getting, it was the update that we got, basically. It's not a new update. It's the exact update that we received. So,
No, I just heard that they're getting updated on expenditures and what's going in against the contract, and we won't be expending more money than expected. That's what I heard Derek say. Maybe I misheard.
well, I think.
Oh,
there's-
yes. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, and then I'll jump back in.
No, I think one of the things is that you're talking about is right now we're in a grounds where we're proceeding with a project at risk, and the risk is being taken by the town council, not by us.
Agreed.
So therefore, if we're not getting those exact figures, well, maybe we should, but the critical thing and what's being told to them is the same thing that what we're hearing tonight, for example, will be in that presentation to the town council on the Monday night.
Yeah, that's correct. And the one point of clarification is, so I've not been giving the town council specific budget updates. What I meant by that comment was when they were concerned initially about the June cutoff, they were concerned about the outlay of cash at that date. And I'm telling you verbally, though I've not given this to anyone in writing, that based on where we are to date, the cash flow projections have slowed down. So I'm happy to provide more detail to this group and town council for that matter if they're interested. But overall, that was meant as a comment that we're doing right by their concerns about minimizing the risk. But Ed is correct that the updates I give them are an abbreviated version of like this very meeting tonight. So they'll get my general comments about what happened in this meeting, and then they'll receive PDFs of the presentation packages that were presented. So I have no problem sharing that with this group as well, but it basically is a nearly carbon copy of what you get at this meeting.
Derek, that all sounds good, but I think what Don is talking about is Dennis Toronto is going to hold you that June 15th. So as long as we can get ahead of that, Sean, with the update, that, because Dennis is going to ask it. So as long as,
Yeah. Yep.
June 15th, blah, 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 the whole thing we went through before. So as long as we get ahead of that with an update before it happens, I don't see it being an issue. I mean, the reasons are sound and
Yeah,
the
if
money is okay. We just need to.
That's my point. Just
Yep.
let them know it may not be June 15th, but it will be X.
Yep.
We need, demographics are taking a little longer, just the more information we can share, the better, because Matt put out a work plan on March 1st in this meeting that was shared with the town council. We are behind in 95% of the bullets on that work plan.
Yep.
We have not updated this. We have not shared any information. I mean, I don't want to sound bitter, but we are behind.
Yes.
And from what we told them in March, and we haven't talked about an update to this work plan. It's 10 weeks since this work plan came out. We've not updated it. We've not done anything. So forgive me if I'm not happy, but I'm not happy.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's fine. And we do have a new work plan that we can issue to both you and them. But yeah, it's message received and we're happy to take action on it.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, it's just about communication too. I think just we have to be careful because a lot of times people on this committee are asked to go in front of the town council and speak. So we need to make sure that we all are on the same page, no matter what.
Mhm.
So I agree with what Don's saying here, like we are gonna be quizzed on this, especially if we're the ones that have to go up and stand up there, we're gonna be quizzed on this. So
Well,
we just need to be on the same page here.
I think one other thing as we approach the end of the month, that it would be best to give us that updated work plan so that we can look at it. But I think one of the other things that we're trying to push for is to get this milestone calendar, not a schedule as much as a calendar that will allow the general public and the council to realize our progress and when things are going to be coming down the line, that when they can expect. And I think that's an important aspect, Derek, that if we can combine, or, it's a simple calendar. Really don't want any type of Gantt chart, because then we start getting into details, and we all know that gets confusing as well. So if we can have a simple
Sure.
milestone that we're moving along and trying to achieve, so as the council gets their phone calls or the school committee gets their phone calls, they're going to be able to refer back to that milestone.
Yeah, at least between now and the vote in November. Those are the key. I don't even want to see the schedule after November.
Well, we
It's-
have to
it's all
develop
moot
that one
point
next.
Until we get to the ballot, right? We
Right.
need to focus on what do we need
Sure.
to do between now and November. We need the stage 2 draft in June. This is what it's going to look like. We're going to have the next revision by whenever. This is what it's going to look like. We'll have the final revision by whenever. And these are the things that we need to do to hit those 3 drafts.
Right.
We need the plan, we need the ed plan by X, we need the conceptual drawings, we need the cost estimating.
And the
We really
demographics.
need that information.
And the demographics. I think, Derek, what might help is if we had just a summary of what we are going to be submitting to RIDE the 15th of June, so they will understand what we're doing and the reason for it.
Yeah, I'm happy to write that up.
Okay.
Not a problem at all.
And I think we need to stress to them what we're trying to do is put what we're trying to do as early to them as possible, so that we don't go down a path where we have to go back and redo everything because they've rejected our stage 2 application.
Right, yeah, this process is very intentional, so I'll make sure that it's also very clear. 'Cause it sounds like that's the principal complaint, is that it perhaps is not very clear, and so we will get there so that it is.
Okay.
Derek, I have a question. I couldn't see the slide real well on your community outreach. But what are the goals for the community outreach? And what work has been done on that so far?
Yeah, so right now we're in a holding pattern on community outreach, more or less. So I believe there is an agenda item later this evening to talk about the communications plan. And so I'm happy to go into more detail around that specifically, but we are working on a more robust communications plan, and the community outreach really is on hold, waiting for tangible documents that we're ready to present for folks to respond to. And then also beyond that, beyond the responding to the tangible documents and the plans that are generated, then the real heavy hitting on the community outreach front is happening 90 or even maybe 120, but more likely 90 days before the vote, because we need to go to people with current information that's fresh, with all of the numbers being understood, which, as we all know, we won't have until the General Assembly recesses for the summer. So community outreach is happening in that we're providing information that's being posted on the website, those sorts of things. But the really kind of robust push beyond the surveys that have happened so far are waiting, essentially, and may wait through a bit of the summer so that we catch people kind of late summer and coming back in the fall, so that people are ready to go when we send it to them in November. So that's kind of broad strokes how I see that going. I'm happy to try and elaborate further. And like I said, we can talk about, I have some more specifics I want to share under the agenda item coming up too.
All right.
No, that's good, Derek. The one thing I would add, Rosemary, is just like, when we do plan it out, I agree with the 90 and 20 days before the vote. Like, that's where we really got to focus on this, but we really got to make sure we hit those like open house meetings, and we got to take advantage of those this year for sure. Cause
we've talked about that as a team.
Yeah.
That those are key areas. We'll have a lot of answers by then.
Yes.
our video. Well, we'll wait till we get to item 11, but.
Okay.
um,
Okay, any other questions on item number
8.
8? Let's go ahead. Manuel, you're up for the update on the education plan, please.
Yes, thank you, co-chairs, superintendent, members of the school building committee, and members of the public. As always, thank you for the opportunity to present. So last time we spoke, I provided an update on some of the surveying that we had done, but at that moment we hadn't had the opportunity to distill all of the feedback that we got from teacher forums. As you might recall, we conducted a set of teacher forums in March through April, but we concluded them in late April. So I'm going to share with you nope, that's not what I'm trying to do. There we go. All right, so I'm going to share with you a little update on those teacher forums. And again, as a reminder, this is part of this process that we have been undertaking as part of the Educational Facility Master Plan to really engage with your educational stakeholders. So this has included meetings with your leadership team and administrators on a weekly basis. We did a faculty and staff survey, a survey with town council and school committee, as well as a community survey. And as a reminder, we're still engaging with students. So we're waiting for the advanced placement tests to end to re-engage with the students who were interested in creating a survey. So we can also plug in some of these questions that I've been hearing. I can help the students include in their survey, which I think will be helpful for us to gather some information. So what I'm going to share with you now is the highlights from the middle school and the high school conversations that we had. I will confess to you that there is probably too much detail to share with you here, so I'm going to run through it fairly quickly. Happy to answer questions, but it's important for me to both capture it and share it for a few reasons. One, I want your community as a whole to understand that we are listening and that we're capturing this feedback and folding it into our planning process. I want the teachers to understand that as well and to see the work that they have done reflected in this process. Again, I'm going to run through a few slides that are kind of give you highlights of the conversation. So I'm starting with the middle school. At the middle school, we had one virtual session, one in-person session. The sessions were structured around these kind of bubble diagrams where we kind of talked about different space types and got feedback. And we have gone through and organized the feedback. Again, I have shared this with Superintendent Krieger and happy to share it with anybody else, and it will get posted. So hopefully each and every one of you, as well as members from the public, can kind of look at this as well as previous distillations that we have provided. So at the middle school level, we have here highlighted by some of the space types. So you'll see that we got feedback on pretty much every single space. So we're capturing just highlights from each of them. Things like storage in the science classroom, where the STEM spaces should be and what type of support they need. Thinking, and we've been thinking a lot about kind of specialists. In some ways, a lot of this is already reflected in the planning work and design work that your design team is doing, because we've been working hand in hand and they actually attended many of these sessions. Again, we were thinking not just about kind of those core classroom spaces, but also the support spaces like music, art, and thinking about the kind of classroom type work, but with music also thinking about the kind of private practice rooms and the bigger kind of performances and what needs to happen to support those. And then at the gym, I'll share with you that the teachers certainly had a fair amount of concern, I'll say, about scheduling all of the athletics in one space. We kind of explained that the plan is not to have them in one space, but to have actually at least 3 teaching stations. But that is something that I want to reflect to you because it's something that is coming up in those conversations. Also thinking about all of those support spaces across the school. So both the kind of social emotional type space, but also some of your kind of behavior support programs. And then thinking about spaces that you don't necessarily currently have, like these collaborative spaces, or we're calling them here learning commons. We got really great feedback about that from teachers, both at the middle school and the high school. They were excited about the opportunity to do kind of collaborative work, large projects, but also being able to take students out and doing kind of projections, but also the opportunity for smaller groups of students to just go find a place where they can work that is close to the classrooms. We also heard a kind of variety of other feedback, and this is a kind of a little capture of some of that. Safety is on everybody's mind, so we did have some conversations about safety. I think I mentioned last time that I met that lockers were a hot debated subject among their high school students. There was some good conversation about lockers at the middle school. But I think and I think in their mind, they're balancing like the need for students to have a place to drop something off, but also issues of safety. And then thinking about academic neighborhoods, at the middle school, it was interesting because they were really thinking about the middle school and opportunities for thinking about transition. So, what does it mean to be at the 6th grade, and what do you need at the 6th grade, and what does it mean to be at the 8th grade, and whether the 8th grade starts to look a little bit more like the high school. Moving on to the high school, again, similar. At the high school, actually, all of the sessions were they were all virtual, apologies. And so we basically used a kind of Miro board that you're seeing here to kind of capture feedback as we went. And again, we've done a similar kind of distillation, first starting with kind of core classrooms. Similar things, although here you'll see things like natural light and outdoor classrooms as kind of wants or desires, and teachers talking about some of the features they want to see in the classroom, like the technology, ability to pin up. Flexible furniture actually came up a few times, as well as the kind of small group rooms to support some of the kind of breakout and also specialist work. Science classrooms, we got feedback both about like what needs to be in the classroom, but also adjacencies. And then math, the teacher shared, some of the math teachers shared the desire for more whiteboard space and bulletin space. With language, actually, this is something that's we're looking at is that need for a kind of computer lab that allows for ELL screening and state testing. So this is something that we're actually looking at and looking to see if we can kind of find an efficiency there, whether we actually need a computer lab or whether that's something that can be done a little bit more flexibly. And then on the computer technology side, feedback both about the kind of technology, the kind of integration of technology, but also some of the connections and necessary adjacencies. We got a lot of great feedback on art, and this one I'll kind of run through fairly quickly, but you can see there was a real, maybe the big thing to highlight is that they were interested in the possibility of kind of shared spaces, and also maybe more importantly, the presence of art or art being more present across the school. We heard this actually from students as well. So, the fact, and it's captured here, is art is off the beaten track. So how does it get better integrated into the school physically and in terms of school culture? Again, we talked about some of those support spaces and like the kind of collaborative spaces. At the high school, again, there was a real interest in finding spaces that could support some of the collaborative work, but also actually thinking about some of the assembly spaces that they do for some of their activities. So they were kind of thinking, and this might not be the Learning Commons, but this is where the feedback fell. Thinking about like when you bring together all your ninth graders, how do you accommodate them? So a lot of really great feedback. I think clear here that this is really useful for the design team to integrate. We did also talk about, actually both at the middle school and the high school, about teacher planning spaces. So that's something that we're integrating, as well as the specialists, both in terms of what the specialist needs are, but also their kind of critical adjacencies. And I think, the specialists, from what we heard, tend to kind of move around and float a little bit. So there was an interest in kind of at least either finding them a hub or finding them office spaces where they could live. And then finally, the library, and again, a lot of great information there, both in terms about what it needs to be, including things like some of the kind of audio recording type work in Green Room that is currently happening, which is exciting. So we'll kind of be thinking about how to integrate those, but also the kind of culling of books. So balancing the kind of love of reading and learning by having books present, but also reducing the amount of material in the library. And then the kind of final category, including some of those assembly spaces, auditorium, cafeteria, and gym. Again, similar set of concerns at the gym. At the gym, I would include that there were some, we talked both about the kind of concern about accommodating all those teams. And here, some of the teachers actually brought up and suggested that the reuse of the high school as a, or at least the high school gym, the existing high school, meaning as a spillover space. So they're already thinking about that, but also one of the things that they emphasized in terms of gym and fitness was some of those other support spaces. So you can see here spaces that allow for kind of functional training, strength training, and yoga. Again, I know that there's more information here than I am reading or sharing. But my hope is that both school building committee members, but also anybody in the public whose interest can kind of spend some more time with it. And in essence, the goal is really to capture or share with you that we are listening, we're kind of integrating this feedback. And as you see the work that your design team is doing, it will reflect some of these things. I will say, I'll be the first to say it so that the design team doesn't have to say it later. Some of it we'll have to kind of manage expectations because some of it will not be exactly what everybody wants. And there will be some negotiation about what fits and what doesn't as we start to deal with the gross square footage number of the school. But we are doing our best to really integrate feedback, and you have a really great design team whose role it is to take that feedback and maybe think about some of these things in creative ways. So that's the work that we have ahead of us. And with that, I will pause, stop sharing screen, and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Yes, Don.
Yeah, Manuel, this is Don. So it's great information, like you said. You can't do everything that everybody's asking, get that. But for some things on there that we can't do, the process to go back, like I know you didn't speak to one, but I read one of the bullets about the 100 trees that were planted by the middle schoolers at Gaudet. What's going to happen to the trees with the new school? We could show them a layout. I don't know which trees they're talking about specifically, but it'd be great to like share with them what the impact is or will or won't be. I don't think it'll be much based on where the school is going, but it'd be nice to understand what the process will be to feedback some of those things like that.
It's around the wetlands
Absolutely.
where they planted some of the, around the wetlands.
Yeah. Okay. So they probably won't be touched. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but Don, I think you bring up the great point, but and I take this all very seriously. So part of the sharing of it is also keeping it present. And so wherever we can loop back and answer some of these questions and or connect the dots, I think it's incumbent on us to do it. And I think people will appreciate and hear their voices heard and their participation honored. So I think it's something for us to keep present.
Yeah, I just didn't know what should we be doing that? Is that you? Maybe we should just discuss how to do that. That's all. That's really all I was looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I have a reflection. Oh, sorry.
No, go on, Manuel.
I think one thing that we could do is kind of make sure that as we move through this, take some of these, we've been purposeful about sharing quotes and sharing insights. And I think we can later on touch back on, not all of them, but touch on some of them and say, we heard this, or you might remember that we heard this. This is how we're approaching it. And I can work with the design team on that for sure.
And what happens with information like this, I will send that out in my Friday update. So this Friday, this presentation will be shared with my staff, our staff, all of our teachers. So it gets conversations going again, questions asked. This will be the presentation at the school committee meeting next week in terms of a building committee's update. So we socialize all these things as we go along, and that helps with the community outreach.
Speaking specifically to Don's question about the trees, that can easily be mapped and that can be done on a group basis. I mean, I have the technology. We can feed that right to the landscape architect. It's not a problem, and it might be something that feeds into the STEM program as well. Lord knows we need younger surveyors out there. We're getting pretty old. And there's not many surveyors out there. I couldn't get any ones to go through the process.
Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to the next item, which is the need for the scheduling the RIDE Building Authority visit.
So I forward the chairs and our design team and architects an email that I received from the educational planner from the school building authorities. They typically like to come down and do a tour, meet our building committee prior to the submission of our stage 2. So I have not responded to them because I wanted to bring it to this meeting to see what schedule, what calendar works for you, what date works for you. Do we invite them to our next meeting? And then we can build the tours after that. So I don't think all of us have to be on the tours, but it would be nice for them to be at a meeting, either in person or virtually.
I think we need to possibly avoid the next meeting just because of some absenteeism that's going to be here at the board.
Okay.
I will not be available, and I don't think Charlie is available as well.
Correct.
So that throws a monkey wrench into the process.
They want to tour the schools. Like, is that what they want to come look at all of our schools? Is that what
They want to meet the building committee prior to our submission of the stage 2, and they do want to tour schools. Derek, you probably can capture what they do.
Yeah,
when they come down.
yeah, I'll offer some kind of shed some light on that. So I would say it should be part of one of the school building committee meetings. It doesn't have to happen immediately, but it makes sense that they're trying to get them scheduled because so many people are going in this cycle. But if we can give them a date over the next month or two as part of one of our regularly scheduled meetings, they would love that because they like to see communities kind of doing the business of the school building committee. And then the tours typically are focused on understanding scope as it relates to renovation work, which we're still very much in the process of figuring that out because really the only renovation work we have is the realignment of the elementary schools. So in that way, we can present what we have at the time, whatever that is. but the tour that they'd probably most be interested in is touring the high school and understanding the vision of it that's been presented for central admin and the realignment of elementary ed. Because otherwise, then the new build, certainly they could look at the open space and understand how the new building will go up. But that's a fairly quick visit if they're interested in doing that at all.
So if we go into June, we're looking at either the 7th or the 21st for us, as far as the building committee. Because the predicament we have is
Yeah,
the meeting on the 22nd.
Do you think we need to wait longer, Derek, based on where we are in the process, or?
so I like the end of June date because knowing that we're targeting a fairly substantial draft mid-June, it will be right around the time we're starting to have conversations with them anyhow, having documents that are ready for them to look at in a more organized way. So, and it gets it done before the 4th of July holiday. So if their schedule will accommodate that date, that would be my preference. We can make earlier in June work. It's just that there'll be the tour in particular, the discussion may be slightly less substantive depending upon how far along we are as we're, kind of racing to get them our draft. So that's what I would say about that. But make whatever works, basically.
Because if you look at
Or
the
it could be July.
Derek, did you say they
Oops, sorry, go
because this
ahead.
is new construction, do they really need to see the schools?
They'll have likely little interest in seeing the site of the new school. Maybe they'll want to do a drive-by, but a lot of that information, honestly, is probably available to them through Google Earth. Typically, when they're wanting to do these tours, it's mostly because they want to look at what you're planning to do against the building you're planning to do it in, and say, "Oh, did you?" I mean, just some examples. Did you consider the traffic pattern at pickup and drop off? How is what you've considered with security going to work based on this existing building? I see that you have some internal classrooms that don't have windows. Are light wells a possibility? Those are the types of comments that would typically come up on a building tour. And so really in that way, it'll be more about them likely touring the high school. I don't know that they'll have desire to tour the other schools.
So we could almost do like a quick site visit before our meeting, maybe with them, and then come here after. If they wanted to, if they want to see where the site is, we could swing there at 4 o'clock, show them around, and then come to the meeting here.
And we don't all have to be there, as superintendent said. It could be, could be just the two of you,
Yep.
whatever, maybe superintendent and the co-chairs or something.
I think the important thing to set up is a meeting with our building committee. I could prepare a packet for them too, prior to their coming here with our agendas, our minutes, or have them linked to our website and the building committee website. So it briefs them before they come down.
So the 21st.
Yeah, I think that's.
I think the 21st June is our better shot because our next meeting is the 5th of July. And I'm sure they're not going to be as,
We could always push that if we have to, yeah.
well, I think the 21st
Yeah.
gives us a time frame where everything is being put together and they can see us as a committee, but also see the package that our consulting team has presenting.
Yeah, I like that, if that works for them. We should offer it to them and see if they can accommodate that.
So what date?
If you
The
all are in
21st.
agreement.
June 21st.
I'll miss that meeting. You don't need me.
If we do.
I'm away that week.
Well, yeah, we always need you.
We need every single person here.
We're gonna, through the summer, there's gonna be a week when.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it might not work for them. I'm emailing them now
Okay.
to let them know the 21st.
21st, we'll shoot for
21st
that.
it is. All right, I think we've kicked that around a little bit. Next is the community outreach and bond campaign update.
Okay, so I'm happy to start with the community outreach component and give you that in a little bit more detail. And then bond campaign update, depending upon what we're talking about, some of that may have to be in a separate meeting, just based on campaign finance. But What I'm working on right now is trying to work with town staff about looking at Matt Shealy's kind of guidelines that he had developed and potentially put forth before you a proposal to consider from a third-party consultant that would start to look at how are we most effective in pulling all of the information together to kind of have just the facts so that we don't violate any campaign finance laws, but really structured programs in terms of putting information out into the community. So the idea is that I would look to find a person for your consideration this month that would be able to spend the balance of the month and June creating content so that around the time legislature exits and we get into the summer in July, we can start to push the information out. So what does that mean? And then as I talked about kind of the 90-day window, that means August, September, and October, right? So in terms of what that means, it means having very clear messaging so that everyone's talking about the same thing, making sure that the content that's going up on the website and social media, email, kind of any communications are pretty tightly aligned as we get closer to referendum date. Being really deliberate about the couple community presentations that we select and where they'll be located and why, providing structure around the community forums. We want to make sure that as part of that, we're all having conversations about early voting and making sure that we keep in the back of our mind that voting actually starts well before election day, as it were. And so we want to try and reach as many people as possible. And then similar to what has been done for the regionalization vote, the development of things that could be mailed, shared, sent around like palm card type information. And the idea again is if we're kind of coming up with all of the content now, we'll have the facts by the time the legislature recesses so that there shouldn't be too many unanswered questions by the time we're really pushing things out to the community and the electorate in August, September, and October. So that's what I'm working toward, and we'll plan to have more kind of action-based updates going forward. But that's really sort of what we're talking about. And then the other ideas really are kind of as I know it, as some members of the community have already engaged, to the extent that we start to get out ahead in front of your local media, that's also going to be something to look at, right? So talking to what's at Newport This Week, Newport Daily News, 10:40 a.m., all of those things. As we start to have more meaningful content and some answers arrive at the end of the legislative cycle, we should be ready to kind of push pretty hard, again, within the limits of what we're allowed to do. But that's really what's happening behind the scenes that I'll be able to unveil to everyone fairly shortly, honestly, at this point.
Derek, I have a question about, I saw you guys' email about, some misquoted things in some of our local papers. And it happens all the time. Like I'll get up there and talk sometime and they'll say something completely different. So, but in your guys' experience, like, do we just let it go, or do we got to respond every time and write a letter to the editor? Like, how does that factor into this?
So it's been my experience that we are better off just accepting what's in print is in print, and then starting to move forward with position pieces or letters to the editor or other content that we create to help the press. Because I think that the press is really just interested in getting content that they think their readership will enjoy. And it is very difficult with smaller local news organizations to have the time to print basically retractions, and they aren't necessarily all that effective anyway. What's more effective in terms of local media is just continuing to lead with a consistent narrative so that if things are inaccurate, they just get changed as new articles get published. I don't know that we'll be successful complaining to local journalists that they need to claim error or print retraction. if we start to have a real problem or something, you know, really not favorable happens, that's a different story. But otherwise, no, I would focus on future, especially since we still have so many months.
Yeah, I would recommend that we reach out maybe to Newport this week. I don't think Newport Daily News even covers, I haven't seen anything from them in a long time. Has anyone else seen anything on our activity? It's just Newport this week. So maybe we can, yeah, like you're saying, just, we'll do regular updates to them. Letters to the editor or whatever it takes.
And there's opportunities as we get in that 90-day window to go on WADK.
What's up?
You know, that's all part
UAN,
of the
yep.
the campaign.
Yep.
The
What's
open
Up Newport-
houses.
What's Up Newport is another big one that's followed by a lot of people in Middleton.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think basically with the targeted content that's just being developed over the next couple of months so that we can push it in the 90 to 120 days, it'll be easier for all of you too, to be able to kind of have what ends up being established as essentially the, you know, FAQs and the talking points and all of the things that you can safely say, which is basically just the facts and nonpartisan, but just getting information out there so that people feel informed and ready to vote to their conscience.
Yeah, the videos
Hopefully
that
will land
Matt,
the way you want it to.
the videos that Matt Shealy developed are up on our website too, and we'll put it on the building committee's website.
Mm-hmm.
He posted some on Instagram.
Yes.
He does a great job on the Instagram.
Yeah, we did that with his support. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
great.
Kiki put that up.
Nice
Yeah.
job with that.
So it's just, you know, starting to flood with the facts.
We just need to ensure we're consistent with the groups that are providing input out there to the.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say that's the difficult thing about this moment that we're in right now. I mean, right now we're very much in planning and there's still so many things that are shifting and there's things that will shift with the legislature. And so, yeah, just being deliberate and perhaps a little bit patient until all of these answers start to emerge, I guess is the advice over the next.
And when we have all
Month or
the
two.
answers, the legislative things and all, we don't want to be in a situation where we have a community meeting and have to say, we'll get back to you on that. I think we need to
Exactly.
be armed with all the answers, possible answers.
Or what, working on this,
Yes,
this, and this.
exactly.
Before it
Right.
comes
Be
out,
very
what are they?
deliberate.
This is what
Yep.
we're working on.
Mhm.
All right. Any other questions on?
Yeah.
Comments on community outreach campaign? Okay, Sean, I think you've shared some emails with some of us. How's things with our legislation update?
We're doing well. So I had met with the House Speaker last week and the legislation for the $190 million bond should be voted out of committee on, we're hoping May 15th. And during that week, we would expect that to be voted on the House floor. The bill has already passed the Senate. They need to take a vote to reconcile the removal of the state grant restriction, but hopefully by the end of May 15th, the $190 million bill will be done. So it'd be House Bill 5792 and Senate Bill 454. That's the one that increases the foundational level of aid to 40% and extends the bonus deadline. Speaker Shikarchi wanted some supporting documentation from RIDE about the total cost of the bill because it not only impacts Middletown, but other communities. And I saw RIDE provided that information today. So he has that information. And we're going to meet with Sharon Reynolds, who's the fiscal advisor to the House next week. But it appears that the committee, once they have that information, will start to discuss it and we'll get it out. We did testify in front of the Finance Committee last week, so that's done. On the Senate side, it's ready to come out of committee. We're meeting with Senate President tomorrow and the Majority Leader tomorrow, Lou DePalma.
Mhm.
So our understanding is as long as those meetings go well, we should see the bills voted out of committee and go to the floor, which will then put us just basically, I think, towards the end of the legislative session during the horse trading to get the bills passed. So I think it's what we expected. And we're still in really good shape. The numbers from RIDE are very favorable.
So when should we know exactly how we stand on this? They just, they,
The last day of the legislative session.
okay.
Set a very high expectation, but that's the reality. So what will happen? The reality is that even if the House is totally in support of the legislation right now, Shekarchi will hold it as a card to the end of the legislative session before it gets approved. That's just the reality of it.
All right. It's easier to build it sometime than it is to get through all the other stuff.
No, and we have a consultant that's, I don't know all of this naturally, but he lives it. So he is strongly advising and setting up the meetings that we need to have. And we are meeting with the leadership regularly. And they're good discussions. People are supportive. They're supportive of it from their communities. It's just getting through the legislative process.
Yeah, and you saw the city of Warwick is doing something similar because
Right.
they're building 2 high schools they passed last fall, and they're concerned about the budget. So they're looking to have the state take some of the debt on their books, just like we're doing, very similar.
Yep. So, and just when we met with this Shekarchi, the president of the school committee from Warwick was there with us. So which was good and bad. It's, because you got a little bit of the Warwick thing going on and their internal squabbles and things like that. So he really does understand that this impacts his community and he's looking for as much money, but there is that trading that takes place. But we are at the big show.
And any chances we get where we see our local legislators, that's the comment.
Yeah, and Tim Duffy's there, representing the school departments
School
too.
committees, yeah.
and Tim has a tremendous amount of respect from people up at the State
Right.
House, so.
And Tim Ryan represents the Superintendent's Association as well. There are a lot of school districts in the queue where we are.
But I think everything's favorable. It's
Okay.
just the timeline just stinks, and it always has.
All right, the next item is just more of a procedural thing. And I think some of the members of the volunteer side of the building committee were requesting that if we could possibly have, I would assume it's a school department email address instead of having this being fed into our personal emails. I think that was something that we should definitely consider.
All right, we'll talk to RIT.
Right.
Have you talked to him yet about
No,
this?
it's the first I
No.
heard, but
Yeah.
I think we can do that.
All right.
So you would want our building committee, let me make sure I know what the ask is, our building committee.
Citizen volunteers, because everyone else already has a
Town or school email.
town or a school
Okay.
email.
All right,
All right,
so
And-
it would be ebrady@mpsri.
right.
Okay.
And then the other thing that we're going to be working on too, from our standpoint, is trying to clean up and work with Kiki on the distribution list
Mhm.
so that, it's much easier who things go out to. List A, list B, and list C, so forth. And the other thing is Don and I have talking to make certain as we put items into the Dropbox, for example, for information, it's easier to understand what it is that we put into the Dropbox and not just the address of the thing.
Mhm.
Don has been working on that as well. So that information is always available to everybody.
Should there be a group email, like the town council, school committee now, building committee, a group,
Well, that's in the distribution side of things that we could certainly look at.
I
Right,
know
we
what
could
you're
have
saying.
building committee, like the school committee has school committee at MPSRI. It's a group
Yes.
one.
Right.
We could do build.
It's
Yeah.
harder, but the access for that is harder
okay.
to have multiple people logging into one email.
Right,
Mm-hmm,
You
okay.
kind of have to have one person overseeing that.
right.
But if
Okay.
you all have separate and we list it on the site,
Yep.
Well, like there's a way when you email the town council, right? You
Yes.
can email, I think it's town council at
Oh,
Middletown.
we can just do a group of all of
Yes.
you.
And then it goes to everybody's.
Yeah, like we
town council.
just implemented the school
We can
committee.
create
that way.
that easily.
Instead of it
So-
going back to somebody responding to this person.
Yeah.
Right.
you know.
If we get if we get an account on the school site, Kiki already has a building committee distribution she uses.
Right,
Just it's
yeah.
building committee at MPSRI.
Yeah. We'll
use
we'll
it.
talk to
Yeah,
our
we'll
IT tomorrow.
populate that with your. with
We'd
your
have to change
emails.
it from our personal email. That's all it's
Very
needed.
easy.
I
It's
do
already
think though that there should be a one email though that anybody in the community could put input into and go to all of us, all of our
Questions start to
NPRs.
come or
Yes,
comments start to
right.
come, it goes to a central.
yes.
Yeah, we
So-
can certainly set that up.
All
Yeah, I
right.
think this is, I mean, I'm surprised that this isn't a requirement from concerns from the town or the school from open meeting law and stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, sending emails and stuff. In my prior building committees, we always had town emails.
Right.
It was required by the town solicitor because we wanted to monitor and back it up in case
Yeah.
you needed anything. Now they don't have any
Access to
access
it.
to anything we
That's
do.
right. I could delete.
Well,
from
it is. I
emails.
mean, the request for public records that,
Exactly.
you know,
All right.
Yeah.
I think we're at the end. Do I have a motion to,
Wait, when, next week, next meeting.
oh, yes. I'm not available next meeting and Charlie is not as well. We haven't had a chance to talk to Bill Nash, for example, because he's, the next
Mhm.
person on the,
Yeah, I just think someone has to fill in for,
someone has to fill in for us.
so let's just figure that out in the next week.
I mean, I don't think I'll even be able to zoom in.
I know I won't.
I'm sure one of us can spill in. Bill is
Yes.
the permanent community member and Mark
Okay.
and I are alternates. I'm sure one of us, we will figure it out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do I have a motion, please, to,
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys.